Hmm? Ah! Hmm.
It's locked. What? Hey, do you think you can open it with your powers?
Boys? Assembly's about to start.
We know. We're just, upset.
Yeah, definitely upset.
And we needed some a long time.
So, cry.
Listen, I get it. I do. I know how hard this is. But let's just be there for Will, huh? And then the Heath kid is all yours for the rest of the day. What do you say? Oh, I don't believe we've met. What's your name?
11. Eleanor. She's my, cousin.
Second cousin.
She's here for Will's funeral.
Well, welcome to Hawkins Middle, Eleanor. I wish you were here under better circumstances.
Thank you.
Where are you from, exactly?
Bad place.
Sweden.
I have a lot of Swedish family.
She hates it there.
Cold.
Sub-Zero.
Hey everybody, I'm Rima.
And I'm Sean.
And this is Strange Indeed, a podcast dedicated to the show Stranger Things.
Today we will be covering the 4th episode from Season 1 titled Chapter 4, The Body.
All right, so let's jump into our top 5 from Episode 4, The Body. So, Sean, what is your... I'm going to let you get started. Do you have any general thoughts that you want to start off the show with, or do you just want to jump into your top 5?
Yeah, let's jump into our top 5. I think there's a ton. I'm kind of curious if we're going to kind of feed off each other on this one, like, because there's a lot of stuff in here.
I agree.
I feel like this is the episode that's like, okay, now the wheels are turning, now things are starting to happen. But yeah, so I'll start off with my number 5.
Right.
I'm going to go with the radio transmission piece on this. So we get this moment where Mike's sitting there and he's flipping through these pictures that Will's drawn. So you see him like fighting dragons and stuff. A lot of their D&D things. Mm-hmm. And, whenever you're kind of in like that sad mood, like any little thing's going to tick you off. And Elle is just flipping through the radio transmitter, just like, just kind of clicking it on and off, like moving buttons. And you can see Mike's like upset about this because he's already annoyed at her for one because of the last episode, and he's going back at her again. He's like, well, Lucas was right about you. You're just a weirdo basically. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you just start hearing that tune. Should I stay or should I go now?
Yeah, the Clash. Yeah.
And, you see Mike instantly turns like, what? And walks over and he picks up the mic, or he picks up the, he's Mike. He picks up the radio and he's hearing Will. And he tries to contact him back. And he has the interaction with Elle there, basically just kind of being like, okay, like, was that Will? Like, did I hear what I thought I heard? And again, you see her using her powers somehow, and it's kind of her signature. Whenever she does use her powers, a little bit of blood coming out of her nose. Mm-hmm. And this leads into a whole interesting side power to her, because as Mike calls in sick the next day for school, gets all the guys over, and starts talking about how somehow she's using her mind to contact Will. And I love Dustin, he's like Professor X. He's always the guy that gets to bring it back to comics, which I love.
I know, I love the X-Men reference.
And so, they get this scheme to get back to the school because they need some more power. They need, Tim Allen, they need more power.
Always. And
so they go and they're going to use the radio, the ham radio at the school. And that's where they get even more communication, because I think Lucas and Dustin I think kind of believed. Lucas for sure thought they were crazy.
Yeah.
Because they get back together and that's, I love that this is all very much from the outside looking in. You could be like, okay, all these people are grieving. Mm-hmm. Mike's grieving. Dustin's just maybe not quite right in the head, maybe a little naive.
Yeah.
But they get all in that same room with that ham radio, and you hear Will very clear calling for his mother.
Yeah.
And each one of them knows what's going on there. And it's pretty cool to see, I guess you can't really be crazy in a group. So each one of them kind of realizing that they're not all crazy. And you kind of have to feel for Joyce a little bit because she's really going crazy by herself.
Yeah, definitely. That poor woman.
Yeah. But I love that, this is kind of that group. They're finding their friend and they're doing it through, through the help of Elle. And using these, because it's kind of cool that these radio or these radios that they use, they talk to each other all the time as kids. I mean, you see like all like 4 of them have their own radios, and this is how they can connect with their friend who's somewhere. We don't know. Is he in the great beyond? Is he in some alternate dimension? Is he a ghost? Maybe he's a ghost and he's haunting us. I don't know.
Right. All very good questions.
But yeah, I just kind of like the idea of them using this radio technology to communicate with their friend.
Yeah, I really like that as well. And that is funny. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say on that?
No, that's kind of pretty much the gist of it.
Okay, well, that I was just going to say that really kind of runs into my number 5, and certainly touches on that, is where are Will and Barb? So one of my questions to you is, like, do you have any additional thoughts on this place? I feel like we've seen a little bit more, like, just not very much, but just a little bit more in this episode when you see Will, towards the end when he's like through the wall at his house, as Joyce peels the wallpaper and you can see, this strange, I don't even know what it is, but you just see this, like, it's obviously not drywall or wood.
Yeah.
And you see Will, and he's calling out to his mother, and he's telling her, she's like, "Oh my God, Will, where are you? Where are you? And, I'll come get you. I'll find you." He said it's like home, but it's cold. It's dark. And then, we kind of see a little bit of it as well whenever that guy at the facility. Now, they're not paying this guy enough. I mean, is this guy getting hazard pay at all? Does he know what he's in for? I'm thinking this the whole time as he's, walking very calmly, over to the middle of the room, and they're strapping him, which is very much, again, I know I referred in the last one that we had talked about, like Poltergeist references. This reminded me a lot of that as they're hooking him up. It was very much like in the movie Poltergeist when they're hooking up Jo Beth Williams to walk into the closet to go get Carol Ann from wherever she is. And, they're making sure that they don't lose her in there, so they've got her hooked up with this rope around her waist. And that was very much like what they were doing in this episode, hooking this guy up. And, he walks up to that, portal, whatever you want to call it, this, other place. And I think we got a glimpse of your goo. Did you catch that?
Yeah, there's some of it there. And that's the thing, is like it kind of opens up.
Yeah.
And it's all like warm and inviting, and he like walks right into it and it just closes behind you.
I know. Creepy, right? It was just gross.
Anytime that somebody has to be like, "Hey, we're going to hook this to you because we don't know what'll happen. And we at least want to be able to pull your body. I mean, pull you back through this thing."
Yeah.
Like you said, like in Poltergeist. Sometimes they do this with divers in oceans with like big giant sharks. We're like, "Hey, we just want to do this here so we can pull you back." Because that air tank is expensive. Yeah, exactly. We're chumming the water here.
No, if I'm in any kind of situation and they're like, "Here, we're going to just hook this up to you," just, I'm like, no. Because you know what that is? That's bait on a freaking fishing hook. Hell no.
Well,
No.
I love to, like, yeah, so that's those, you don't know what's in there. And we still don't know. I mean, we've seen the monster thing a little bit, but you still really don't know, like, okay, like, is there one loose? Is there one that's getting out? Is there more of them?
Right.
Is that the same thing that attacked Barb? Is there more stuff in there? Like, you just have no idea.
Well, and it's like, what is making, because it's like somehow these worlds are crossing, because you see, Joyce peels the wallpaper and she sees this place that Will is at, and she sees him, hears him, he can hear her, so they're able to communicate. This creature has been able to, obviously there's something in there, whether it's the same creature, I mean, no, we don't know for sure, but there's something there. Is it the same one that we've seen that in the first episode made, scared Will and made him fall off his bike and run into the woods, and what took him? Is it what we saw, or what Barb saw? Is it what Nancy saw in the woods when she was looking for Barb? These worlds are somehow crossing, like they're merging at times, but yet they're not, because then you see, Joyce later take that axe to the wall, and because she's like, he was right there, I can find him, and then of course it's just a wall. She's literally just busted a hole in her living room wall, and people are obviously going to think she's crazy for that, but it's like it was there and then it's not. So what I wonder phenomenon is happening to make these worlds kind of start to merge. It's like they merge and then they pull apart. Is it 11? Is it something at the facility that's happening to make, this happen?
Yeah, I don't know if in all the events when stuff happens, if Elle's been doing something specific, but I know in this one, she was trying to communicate with Will.
Yeah.
And that's when the portal kind of opened, or at least the visible, like, it almost looked like a glass enclosure. Mm-hmm. And so she could kind of see inside. Like, I don't think she could make out Will, but she could, she at least could sense that he was there. But the creepiest thing was that, like, you see that open up, and then as it seemed like it was about the same time where Elle was kind of starting to fade out, you kind of saw, like, the plaster and the drywall kind of start to come back.
Yeah.
And just kind of
covering it
close.
back up.
Yeah. And just the scene, and I don't know if you have much more to add to your number 5, because this is great. Like, it's like we sketched this out. This actually leads into my number 4.
We share the same brain.
But that's kind of my question here is like this. It's that opening to what? You have the facility has their own little portal, and like you have to feel for Joyce in this scenario because like it closes up and she's like, oh, okay, I know where my son is now, and she takes that axe and just destroys that wall. And how heartbreaking that would be to be like, he was just there, and now I'm just looking out into it's the world, but it's basically nothing to me at this point. It's not what I want to be looking at.
Yeah, because that's not where her son is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's all that I had to say about my number 5. So if you had some point regarding that or similar to that relates or something in your number 4, feel free, because that's all that I had on my 5.
Yeah, I mean, basically the main thing I added to that is like when I saw them walking into that abyss. I don't even know if it's an abyss. I don't even know what you call it. But that guy walks into it and it closes him. I can only think like WTF, like what the fuck is that?
Nuh-uh.
Because and again, like you said, is this guy getting hazard pay? Like it's like, okay, listen, Tom. This is like the conversation is like, listen, Tom. You've been doing great work here. You've been, keeping all of our, our experiments under wraps. We're thinking about promoting you, but we got one more task for you, Tom. We need you to walk through the goop. Like, listen, I know it's scary, but we believe in you, Tom. And if you come back out, we will give you 2 weeks pay off. If you die, well,
severance package to your family.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we're classified here. So it'll basically be that you had a workshop accident,
Right.
Good luck. Bye, Tom.
Shove him through the little wall there. Good luck. Yeah, we'll put your kid through college if you do this and don't make it out.
But, I mean, like, he walks in and you don't really sense much from him. And they didn't do the trope, at least, that it seems like they typically do with stuff like this, where they have, I mean, I guess they did have something kind of tug on it. Mm-hmm. But usually you have where, like, it runs with the wire or the rope. Like, it takes it all the way to the end and sucks it into wherever it's at.
Like Jaws.
Yeah, exactly.
When the Jaws would, like, take off with the bait that was on the end of the barrel.
Yeah. They do, like, the little fish run kind of thing. So I like that it didn't do that, and it just basically, so he's in there. They're like, okay, he's not communicating with us, because apparently the radio still worked for them, too. Mm-hmm. And their concern at that point is like, okay, well, he's not communicating what's going on. And finally he does get back to him. It's like, oh, thank God. Like, there's the little, the pre-freak out where it's like, he's dead. Oh, no, he's not. He's fine. But, they just kind of start slowly rolling it in, and it just pops out with just, I couldn't even really tell what it was. But it seemed like it was some kind of metal. So I don't know if it was just the metal that was hooked to him.
Yeah, it kind of looked like the belt, but the belt was not whole. Like it was like he was grabbed or ripped, or it was like he was like just torn right out of that belt. Because the belt did not look whole, but it looked like whatever was around his waist that hooked to that contraption that they had him to. And I guess that explains a little bit as to what they were doing in that previous episode when Dr. Brenner is just staring at that portal. I was wondering what it was that they were, because he's just standing there with his arms folded. But in the background or next to him, you see that they're like locking this thing down on the floor, and you see them bolt it into this concrete floor. And I remember thinking, like, what are they doing? What is that? I guess that's what it was. Is there, okay, we're sending someone in there who draws the short straw.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because that's the first time the doctor really seemed freaked out too.
Yeah,
because as they start it gets tugged on, and like the guy screaming, he's like, "Reel him in, reel Tom in."
Exactly, because he's like so cold and heartless. We don't see him show. He's so stone faced, and like emotionless throughout everything. His interactions with Eleven, even at first, as he's watching this guy, because he kind of cuts back from him to that. I think his name was Shepard, that they called him, the guy that walked into this unknown. He's just like stone faced, and yeah, that was where you saw him kind of get jarred, like, oh hell, this is not good. So yeah, it was like, oh well, now you know it's bad because he's
Yeah. Well, and I hope that's actually because it's kind of again like the trope of like it's just the people freaking out, so everybody's screaming because something bad's happening. I hope there's some backstory to why he was so concerned about that. It may be a selfish, like, he wanted to conduct tests on Shepard when he pulled him back out, or maybe he thought Shepard would be able to tell him what he saw, but not just the kind of trope of, oh my gosh, okay, something bad's happening. Let's everybody scream at the top of their lungs.
right.
Like, I like there to be something more to it, but, probably realistically, it's just kind of to add some tension to the scene.
Definitely. Well, it was tense.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing too. Like, we don't really know where this portal came from. Like, from the sense I get from everybody is it just appeared. Like, it's not like it's something that's slowly grown, or like, it's not like that pimple that started out small and got bigger. It's like all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, there's some portal thing here.
Right. Like they weren't expecting it,
Yeah.
or they weren't trying to conjure this, and bring it to the forefront. It just, something happened, and now they're trying to figure out what it is instead of like trying to, report it or they're trying to figure it out, but it's like they're covering it up. Obviously all this stuff is happening. So I don't think that they did it on purpose. So, but we'll see, right?
Yep. So yeah, that was kind of tied into my number 4. Is I kind of like basically I'm saying like this is an opening to what?
Let's hope we get that answer. What's your number 4?
Oh, that was kind of my number 4.
Oh, that was
kind
your
of
4?
led into-
Okay,
yeah,
cool. Good number 4. I mean, like you said, there's so much to digest, and I don't mean that that sounds kind of icky, considering that guy kind of got digested wherever wherever he ended up. Poor Shepard.
That's what the suits are for, so like you don't accidentally open your mouth and like accidentally take some of that goop in your mouth. You're like, oh, it tastes like cinnamon.
That's
It burns.
worse. That's worse. It doesn't look like fun. Ghostbusters, when he gets slimed, when Slimer slimes him in that hotel, that does not look pleasant at all.
No, it does
And I think
not.
it's got a smell to it. I can imagine a smell. I don't think they mentioned that in the movie Ghostbusters, but I can just imagine a smell. Okay, so my number 4 is just 11. I know I've talked about her a lot in the other episodes and stuff, but she's just so adorable and fascinating. We're peeling the layers of this girl, this unknown girl that has escaped from her captivity, if you want to call it that. I think that's pretty accurate. I thought it was really adorable. What really stood out to me a lot was like there in the middle when they're thinking of how they can smuggle her into the school so they can get
Yes.
her to conjure up Will through that ham radio. I thought it was really cute. All the boys, like completely clueless boys at this age who, were freaking out when she was like trying to undress herself in a previous episode, that they're all trying to pick out these, it looks like dress up clothes that maybe, or
Yeah.
maybe hand off clothes from Nancy when she was younger or something, or maybe play dress up. And they found this wig, and they found this dress, and they get her all dressed up to try to make her look somewhat normal. Because obviously at that time, I mean, girls with buzz cuts probably aren't like a big deal now, but like back in that time, it definitely would have been made her stand out. So they're,
Yeah.
they get her with this cute hair, and I just thought it was so adorable. The boys look at her and like, oh my gosh, you look normal, you look really cute. And of course, Mike, who I think we know
Yes.
probably has a little bit of a crush on her. I mean, he really, really, I think, genuinely cares for her as a friend, but obviously I think he does have a bit of a crush on her. And then I think it was really sweet for her to see herself in the mirror, because it's like, oh my gosh, because it's like, how does she see herself? How does she picture herself? What does she think of herself? Other than like a project or just a subject or something, because it's like that's all that they, at least from what we've seen of her life with Dr. Brenner and all of these experiments that she's being forced to do, it's like she's not a person, and it's like she got to dress in these real clothes, look like a real girl, so it makes me curious, like how does she see herself? And now she's seeing herself as like a normal girl, and I thought it was a really touching moment. I thought it was really sweet. She clearly, she's such a sweet girl. She doesn't want to hurt anyone. In the last episode when they had her doing, which we don't know the true nature of that experiment, but when she was in the room with that cat, I think that they wanted her to do something to that cat.
Yeah, I
that
think they
was
wanted
not
to Coke can it.
yeah, that was, I don't think, very humane. And she didn't want to do it. She told him no, and she got punished for it. And then in this episode, we saw where she was fearful of hurting this man that they wanted her to do this experiment, like look like a mind reading experiment with. And she just really, I just thought all of that was really interesting. She's really, I think it has a lot of depth for her character for such a little kid. And I really, really, I just thought that was super cool. And that experiment where where they did want her to read that guy's mind, he's like, just take a peek and just repeat those words, back to me. And instead you get that little like glitch in the electricity, and instead she starts playing what he's saying over the loudspeakers. Wasn't that like so crazy cool? I mean, it's like, okay, I'm gonna let you hear what he's saying, but I'm not gonna repeat it. You're gonna hear it. It's like she went above and beyond. It's like that's how much power she has. I feel like we've only just got to see a little bit of what she can do. So I just find her absolutely fascinating. I thought there were some really cool moments where she's connecting with Will, trying to get him to communicate, and so the other boys can hear him. They can't necessarily communicate with him, but they can hear him. And then, you see this other side where she looks human, like a girl. She feels like one of them versus like some sort of subject or object. And then just, I think, getting more glimpses of her power and what she can do is super cool. So I love her as a character.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So like you're talking about her playing over that loudspeaker. I think I missed that because I heard him talking. And I know it kind of sounded like it was, I guess, over a radio, but I guess for some reason, I didn't make the connection that was happening over the radio, like over the loudspeaker. So that makes that scene like even more intense. Mm-hmm. I don't know how I missed that, but that's pretty cool.
Well, I'm pretty sure because they were kind of, how they kind of cut back and forth as she has these flashbacks, So, I mean, unless, you go back and watch and please later correct me if I'm wrong, and listeners as well, if you want to write in and say, nope, you were so wrong, please feel free. I can take it, I promise. I don't like being proved wrong, but I can take it. I'm a big girl. I'm almost positive that as he's reading, because it's like he's just reading words, like just objects, and I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but he's just reading off this piece of paper, these items, and he's in that separate room, and I could swear that was his voice playing, because you get that little, you see her and Dr. Brenner sitting in that little room, and her eyes are closed, and she's concentrating and trying to focus, and the lights flicker, like we keep seeing the lights flicker throughout when weird stuff's getting ready to happen. We see the lights flicker, and then all of a sudden, you hear his voice over the loudspeaker, and Dr. Brenner looks like he's about to lose his shit. So I thought it was pretty cool that we get to see just a little bit more every episode, a little bit more of what she can do, and it's super awesome.
I think that's kind of like, you think of the Jean Grey character, like if you see like there's a lot of like that feels like they're pulling from different types of pop culture, and that's kind of like Jean Grey was like this, super mutant, but she didn't really know all the power she had until she became like the Phoenix. It's kind of like the same thing. Like, this guy knows she has some power, but doesn't really know the full capacity and the full extent of that power. Mm-hmm. In that moment, it's like, oh yeah, I can not only read this guy's mind, but I can also do this crazy thing with the electricity and push it through the radio or the loudspeaker.
Right.
The other thing I thought was kind of cool is like you're talking about them sneaking around with her in the school. The interaction when the teacher catches them. I don't know if you remember that part specifically, but so like all the kids show up and they're trying to sneak into the
when the door was locked and they're in the hallway.
Yeah. And he scares them and they're just kind of going on about it's like oh, we're in mourning, we've been crying all day.
Yes.
And the teacher asks like, oh well, I don't think I've met you. It's like what's your name? Eleanor. Her name's Eleanor. Oh,
She's
Eleanor.
from Sweden.
Yeah, she's from Sweden. It's his cousin, second cousin. She hates it. She hates it in Sweden. It's cold. But the other thing I thought was kind of funny because like you talked about all the '80s references from the previous episode, like right when Dustin grabbed that wig and they were putting the lipstick on her. Like I definitely got an E.T. vibe.
Yes, good pickup. Yeah. Oh, and E.T. had the little blonde wig too.
Yeah,
it was adorable. Good point. I totally got by me.
But I mean, you have to be impressed. That's the thing. I was like, okay, these like 12-year-olds are putting makeup on like a 12-year-old girl or 11-year-old girl to go to school. Again, I wasn't a young girl growing up, so I don't know what age girls start wearing makeup, but that kind of stood out to me as being kind of weird, especially for Mike being able to kind of, he did a good job putting on makeup, so maybe he's watched his sister a few times.
Shockingly, yeah. But I think that's what made it even more funny because I don't know that I mean, I know when I started wearing makeup, but anybody that knows me knows that I'm a complete product junkie, and I have like lived in makeup for forever, for as long as I can remember. So I probably started wearing makeup a little bit earlier, maybe than some girls. I don't think it was a typical age, but I think that's what's really funny. It's because like that would be such a clueless boy thing to do. Is like, well, you're a girl, so you have to wear makeup. It's just, it doesn't matter your age, you just have to wear makeup. You're supposed to wear makeup, and they're trying to go above and beyond to make her look normal and look like a regular girl. So it seems like a real typical boy thing to do. Like, well, you just have to wear makeup.
Yeah, I learned at a young age, like makeup and that stuff isn't for me because I don't remember why I was in my sister's room, but she had this. I think I wanted to figure out what this stuff was. It's just perfume, but it was like flavor scented perfume, like strawberry or something like that. Mm-hmm. And so in my mind, I'm like, oh, I bet it tastes like strawberries. I'm like, sprit in my mouth. I'm like, oh no, that didn't taste like strawberries.
Does not ever taste like strawberries.
It's like a mouthful of alcohol.
Yeah.
Gross.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it never, especially in those days, probably when you were little, that stuff, if it was scented or flavored at all, it didn't taste as good as it sometimes smelled. So you learned a hard lesson there, my friend.
I did. Always be careful what you put in your mouth. That's what I learned.
I think that's a pretty good rule to live by. Just a good rule in general for so many things. Oh my God, where were we at?
Let's see. That was so you're on your number 3. It was L 11.
That was my number 4.
Or number 4. Yeah, sorry.
Got me all in a tizzy. So okay, I think we've covered my number 4. We're gonna move on. So what's your number 3?
Okay, so my number 3, I kind of was tying not only just the Jonathan and Nancy scene, but also kind of the Barb investigation. There's kind of a lot to cover there, but
yeah.
You know, like first she's getting investigated by the cops. And again, we get a great Steve the D moment in this episode.
I was waiting on that.
Yeah, so, you know, Nancy is all concerned about her friend Barb, which she should be. Like, she's not at school, she's disappeared. And all Steve is worried about is getting in trouble for having some friends over. And he called it a party. Mm-hmm. And the more I thought about it, I was like, it was barely a gathering. Because there's only 4 people there. Like, that's not a party.
No, that's a makeout session.
Yeah, exactly.
A group
but
one.
But his concern's like, you know, my dad's going to kill me. It's like, your dad's not going to kill you, dude. Settle down. Well, don't tell the cops about the beer because then we'll all get in trouble. And again, like, I'm like, okay, well, first off, like, she doesn't really need to tell them they were drinking beer. Like, that's kind of not pertinent to the situation.
Exactly.
But I really got a pervy cop feel. Like, those 2 guys are interviewing her, and, you know, she mentions the car. He's like, well, the car's gone. And she talks about, like, well, I told her to leave. And so I went up to Steve's room. And they're like, oh, well, what'd you go up to Steve's room for?
Right.
She's like, well, I wanted to change out of the wet clothes. And Steve and I just talked. It's like, well, was this before or after you got out of your wet clothes? It's like, come on, dudes. Like,
no, like, really, her mother is sitting right there.
Well, and the thing with her mom, too, so, like, they get back to the house, and her mom's like, you lied to those cops. You didn't tell them the truth. And she's like, I slept with him, Mom. Like, that's not pertinent to the situation.
That's not what is important right now. It's like, it's so frustrating.
And that minute, maybe minute and a half tops, I don't think that's when Barb disappeared.
You're not being very generous with Steve at all.
But I mean, yeah, like you figure out like the car's gone, and like her mom makes the whole situation out of her sleeping with him, which doesn't make any sense. But she starts going through the picture that was ripped up, and I don't understand again why she had to put the whole picture together. But she notices in one of the corners kind of something odd, and so she makes the trip to go see Steve, or not Steve, I'm sorry, to go see Jonathan. And kind of like try to figure out more about like, okay, do you have more pictures? Can you like, and he ends up blowing that picture up to look at it closer because they have this whole conversation where, you know, he's heard his mom talk about the faceless person. And here she is talking to Jonathan about that situation she ran into behind Steve's house. She's like, yeah, I couldn't tell what it was, but it didn't look like it had a face. I think that's maybe what Jonathan says. He's like, well, it didn't have a face or something like that. And they end up blowing this picture up and seeing that, oh my gosh, like, you know, these people aren't crazy. Like, there's something there. And now Jonathan and Nancy are both kind of in the nose. Like, there's something out there that's not right.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting that when it's like that was a trigger for him when she said, like, she's frustrated because it's like no one's listening to her, and she doesn't really know what she saw, and then she says without a face, and then that kind of triggers him. It's like, oh God, my mom said the same thing. Maybe she's not crazy after all.
Yeah, because we just came off the scene because he was at the funeral parlor.
Yeah.
And we just come off the scene where basically he's basically told his mom, he's like, you're batshit crazy, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's something we have to deal with right now, and that's my brother, your son, who's dead. And she knew, like, she's like, no, that's that thing. I don't know what it is, but it is not my son.
Yeah.
And so he's coming off of that, and it's always kind of like, I hope I never have to experience this, like, in my life where I think somebody's batshit crazy. It's like, oh no, actually I saw a UFO too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh fuck, there's UFOs in this world. And so I really like that. I mean, I liked how he played it because they just kind of like, it's like, the veil being lifted off your face. It's like, oh my gosh, like everything is so clear now. And like, I understand like something bad is going on.
Yeah. What a moment. Light bulb moment. Yeah. Really good.
But yeah, my number 3 is kind of tied into that Jonathan Nancy situation, just kind of the whole Barb investigation.
It's hilarious. I swear, people are going to think that we talk about this before we podcast on it, but that's pretty close to my number 3 as well. But it was more specific just to Steve's attitude.
Okay, yeah.
And I think you covered it pretty well. He's like, you got to lie to the cops. Don't tell them about the beer. He's so worried about his parents, and she's just looking at him like, are you serious? Like that's what they're going to worry about. There is a person that is legit missing. Like, Will is already missing, so the town is already kind of up in arms. And yeah, everybody thinks Joyce is a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but, it doesn't change the fact that he's missing, and nobody knows what happened to him, and nobody can explain it yet. And now there's potentially another person missing, and no one seems to really be... Like, we don't hear too much from, like, Barb's parents. Or have they called the what's happening from that? And I guess they have, like, called the police because they're then questioning Nancy about that night. But it's like, nobody seems to be taking it as seriously. Like, they're just thinking it's just more teenage behavior, like when someone's like, well, did she run away? And it's like, that's her best friend. Anybody in the world that knows her and knows that that's not something that she would do, and they're not listening to her at all. It's, like, so frustrating, because they're kids, these are all kids. So we're so dismissive of kids.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating.
Especially in this time frame, I think. Like in the early 80s, it seems like it's like, well, you're a dumb kid. What do you know?
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm 22 years old. Yeah, you're dumb. Go watch your TV, you dumb kid.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's, and I get that frustration. I mean, I think we've probably all been there. I mean, we've all been kids at one point or another, and we've all been there trying to convince a parent or an adult, someone that, I'm not kidding, I'm not crazy, or this, I really heard this, I saw this, whatever it is, and you just get dismissed because you're a kid. So obviously you have no relevance and no point to make or any voice at all. And so I get that frustration. So I really think that Steve was definitely living up to the name that you've given him, Steve the D, in this episode. We only saw him for just that short time, but it really just, I really just wanted her to just, like, smack him.
Yeah.
I don't know, just something, but, she let him off, I thought, a little bit too easy. And I'm like, you still like him. You still like him after that.
That's those dudes in high school. They always got the girls. I don't know why.
Well, I mean, we're always a sucker for the bad boys, and I think that's kind of what he is. But I mean, there always comes a point when you're acting like an outright ass, and especially that last episode really got me, where he was just so mean to Jonathan. And yeah, he was a bit of a creeper in that episode, but to break that camera, that would have been it for me. I'd be like, you know what? You just went too far. That was, he was a bit of a creeper. He needs to apologize, but break his camera, not cool.
Yeah, I think this, I just had a thought of like how if I wrote this episode, and this is why I don't get to write episodes, because this whole scene in the alleyway, what it would have gone for me is he'd been like, okay, listen, Nancy, like, don't tell them about the party, or it's just a gathering. We were studying. Don't tell them about the beer. Don't tell them about like how he like made love for like 30 minutes and like it was the best. I think you had like 15 orgasms and or something crazy like that. And like she just give him like I don't know what kind of watch you were using, but like I was timing it, and the little hand didn't move very far. So
I was counting ceiling tiles.
That's funny.
Oh Lordy. Yeah, Steve. It'll be interesting to see where we go from here.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Like that's one guy I would love to get seen sucked up into that like abyss place and chased by the faceless monster.
Like volunteer him to go in instead of poor
Yeah.
Shepard and be like, yeah, we got you, Betty, we got you, and then cut the line from your end and be like, we don't know what happened.
But the problem is what happens is the monster would come out crying and be like, "Oh, Steve hooked up with me, but he didn't call me the next day." It's like he slept with the monster too. Jeez, Steve the D. What the hell?
This guy just can't keep it in his pants. That's true. You know, I knew some of those guys in high school. Okay, moving on. Number 2. What is your number 2?
All right, so my number 2 I have is the Men from State. So small town, you know, we see Joyce and we see Jonathan being taken to the coroner's office with Hop. Hop's taking him there, and you know he's sitting there and he's like, you know, Hopper's kind of like, well, what's taking so long? And he learns that Gary was let go that night. Like some people told him that they would take care of this. It was some guys from State, and it leads into a lot of interesting things. So it's very much kind of like conspiracy cover up, like a lot of red flags going up. You know, it's like, okay, well, he talks to Gary and Gary's, you know, going on about like, yeah, you know, they told me to leave, yada yada yada. He's like, it's really strange considering. And Hop, you know, kind of pries. He's like, considering what? He's like, well, considering this is Will Byers and not JFK.
Right.
And so like you see, like, I love Hop on this. Like,
I know.
if this was small town, like, you know, if you had the two goobers that were trying to figure out that the teenage people had sex, you know, if they were the ones running this case, like, they would be like, oh yeah, makes
oh my
sense.
God. Yeah.
But Hop's like, okay, this is really, really weird. And so his investigation or his like undercover work at the bar was just awesome too.
Yes.
Because, you know, he sits there and he kind of like drops some hints about like, oh yeah, you know, my daughter just won the spelling bee today. I can't remember what the word was, but he's like, yeah, it's a fancy word for toothache.
Yeah.
And he just continues to pry, and he basically, you know, triggers the guy because the cop, the state trooper, knows he did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that Hop figures that out. And, you know, I don't know if this is realistic or not, but, you know, Hop doesn't take that for the answer. You know, he basically beats an answer out of him. And then we learn that there's a car that's following these people.
Yeah. Like making sure that he's not talking. Like, what did they do to this guy? Because he's like, you know, you've done it now. They're going to kill us. You know, because whenever Hop turns around, he's like, who are those guys? You know, and he sees them in that car. And it's like, well, what did they do to that guy? You know, how did they threaten him? You know, what did they say to him to, you know, hold up to that story, or at least until Hopper beat it out of him, essentially. And I don't think he's supposed to do that, just saying, since he's the cop. I mean, I'm not against what he did. I'm pretty sure, though, as a cop, he's not supposed to be doing that. But I don't know.
Yeah, probably not. But it just like you don't. I don't even know really how to put it into words, but it seems very realistic, even though it's not.
Yeah.
Like it's not the Murder She Wrote style of, oh, it was so and so at the diner room with the wax candle.
It's like not so Scooby Doo.
Yeah, exactly. Like it feels like he's, you know, at first he doesn't believe Joyce is freaking out about this. Like he's like, okay, well, like this sucks. Like this kid fell in, you know, accidentally and drowned.
Mm-hmm.
But then all these things just don't add up. And instead of just being like, okay, well, I guess it's just how it is, he does police work.
Right.
Even though he is basically going against other police officers, he's trying to figure out, okay, like, is there anything here? And we learn that there is stuff there. But yeah, it kind of just goes into like the Men from State and kind of Hopper being able to kind of, you know, follow these breadcrumbs to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you, because if he wasn't in charge, and if it was either anyone else or anyone like those two other fellas that were questioning Nancy, like these two Barney Fife, you know, they may not be as bad as like Barney Fife, but they're just small town cops who just don't seem to know the questions to ask. They don't know the leads to follow. They don't seem to be questioning a whole lot. And, you know, Hopper is, because he's right, because this is a small town. I mean, not that a kid disappearing and dying is not a huge deal, but it's a small town. It's no one of super importance, like the parents or somebody big in the town or something, like they have a name behind them or something, so why all this red tape? Why did state make this coroner go home, and why did they take care of it? What's the big deal? Why are they, like you said, it's Will Byers, it's not JFK. So it's really cool to see Hopper taking that questioning nature and then following the leads, and then that leads him to that cop in the bar. And then that leads him back to the morgue later, which I thought was really cool. And I'll definitely get to that. But, yeah, I'm in total agreement. I know I talk about Hopper every episode, but I love him. I do. I love his character. I love the guy playing his character. I think he's really doing a great job. And like you said, it's believable because
exactly.
I think that it's, I think that was kind of big in the 80s, a lot of these conspiracy theory movies. I don't know if you've seen, and I'm trying to think of what that Meryl Streep movie was, and I just totally drew a blank, but I know Winona Ryder used it as inspiration, of these cover-ups, these government cover-ups and conspiracies that, some are pretty far-fetched, but, some of them you kind of thinking, like, that's not so far-fetched that something that could happen,
Every now and then some come true. I mean, there was the conspiracy theory that the government's watching you through your computer. Hi, government.
Hi.
And guess what?
We're waving.
They kind of were.
Yeah.
There was a conspiracy theory that, they were doing like LSD experiments on people. And it's like, no, the government wouldn't do that. And 20 years later, like, oh, yeah, actually, they were.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's not too far-fetched to think that something, because it's not like this is happening in like a big town. This is happening in a small town where they're assuming people aren't going to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
They're, as long as, like they can do these little experiments, but something has happened anyway to cause this event, and this other like dimension or just whatever, has caused these chain of events to start happening. They can just keep doing all these strange things, at least until all of this happens. But, it's not that far-fetched. And like you said, very believable. And the way that he, very, just uses his police techniques because it's really not that difficult. I mean, he's really good and really suave at what he's doing and how he's playing it and stuff. But it's really just good detective work. So it's not like he has any superpowers helping him.
Yeah, like you said, it's not far-fetched. I mean, like the first thing is like, okay, well, I found this piece of cloth, which seemed kind of odd. So and I see this cloth in these pictures of this stuff. So let me go and check out this this facility. And it's just like, what they showed us, there was no rain. It was raining that night, which again, like you'd be like, if that's the only weird thing, it's like, okay, well, maybe they didn't want us to see something else. Like maybe this is what they show everybody because it's a government house or whatever.
Right. Show them the
but
standard
it just leads into, okay, like this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. Okay. Then you just start getting more and more down that rabbit hole of investigation, which is really what he's doing. He's just investigating. He's following all of his leads and making sure that he doesn't leave any stone unturned. On a side note, one thing I saw, it doesn't really have anything to do with specifically the investigation, but when he was at the bar, I noticed on Hopper's wrist, it almost looked like a bracelet like a kid would make. I saw it on my second watch through and kind of looked at it a little bit closer. Again, this could just be something David Harbour wears. But I was kind of curious if that had anything to do with Sarah, because it was just kind of like, it looked like, something a kid would weave and give to like a dad on Father's Day.
Oh, I totally missed that. Good pickup.
Yeah, so it's something I'm going to kind of keep an eye out for. I don't know if it's going to play in anything else. Like I said, it may just be, something he wears, because maybe it's in real life his kids gave him that. But
yeah.
I thought that was kind of interesting to see that kind of on full display right there as he's talking about his daughter.
Yeah. Well, and that makes total sense because it's something that girls like to do, make jewelry, and, young girls like to, if you paint a picture or draw a picture, you give it to your parents. If you make something, even though, as a dad, they wouldn't typically want to wear something like that, but, his daughter gives it to him and he wears it. I think that would totally make sense. So really good point. I totally did not pick up on that. So I'm going to be watching for that as well and see if that comes to play either in the season or the next. So very good. And I was drawing a blank while ago for anybody that wants to know what the hell movie I was talking about. It was Silkwood with Meryl Streep. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't. I think you talked about it first episode, maybe, or second.
I did, because Winona Ryder kind of drew her inspiration for her character of Joyce and her haircut from Silkwood. It's a really good movie. Okay, tell me you love Kurt Russell.
Oh, Kurt Russell, yeah, he's way
Okay,
up
so
there.
Kurt Russell's in this movie.
Okay, that gets me in right
Does
away.
does that do it for you if Meryl
Yeah.
Streep doesn't do it? It's really good. So
Kurt
I
Russell,
definitely...
a side tangent. Kurt Russell's like, even at this age, like he is still a badass.
Oh my god.
And
Yeah.
like Goldie Hawn, like they've been together for a long time. I don't think they've been married, and
No.
I'm sure it's Hollywood, so I'm sure that's not the only woman he's been with for the last 30 years. But the fact that they've been together that long as a couple is just kind of cute,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
And they still seem super crazy about each other, which is
Yeah,
adorable.
yeah.
When you see them together, they look like they're still really crazy about each other, which I love. Yeah, I love them both. Love Kurt Russell, love a young Kurt Russell. So yeah, he's in this as well. So yeah, check out Silkwood, guys. It's really good. If you like, I won't give any kind of plot away, but if you like anything about, a little bit of conspiracy theories and cover-ups and different things. It's a really good movie. I know it's old, and I said that there was like a timeline on spoilers, but I won't tell anything about this one, but it's really good. Cher's in it too, so hey, bonus. Okay. Thank you for that, Sean.
You got to bust out that whenever you talk about Cher.
Absolutely. I didn't know we were going to get such a treat whenever I brought up Cher. That's awesome. I'm going to do it every time now. So my number 2, we get back on track here. Mine is very short. I don't have too much to say because there's not a lot to say about it because it kind of speaks for itself. I really, really like the scene. That all the kids, like you had mentioned before, the science teacher, and I'm usually good with names, and his name escapes me, but I love that science teacher. The science teacher hustles all the kids to the assembly. They all walk in, they go through it, they're sitting in the crowd, and they see those 2 little bully assholes, mocking the whole situation, which
Yeah.
they at this point don't really believe Will is dead, but it's still the fact that other people do, and it's still being very disrespectful, to Will and his memory, and the fact that he might not be dead, but he is still missing. The boys know that he's missing. So, they witnessed this, and I really, really loved it when Mike stood up to that bully Troy. And this didn't hit me until I was making my notes when they said Troy, and I thought, because I just was watching Fear the Walking Dead yesterday, and there's a character in Fear the Walking Dead named Troy who's bit of a bully, bit of a psychopath for anyone that watches that show. And I thought, oh my God, this little bully's name is Troy too. Is this are all kids named Troy bullies? Sorry, anyone named Troy out there listening. I don't really mean that. I don't know. I'm asking that question. Tell me, are you a bully? Because if you are, stop it. But I really...
#bullying's wrong, Troy.
Yes. But I really, really love that moment where Mike, because you see them throughout, like from episode 1, from the beginning, where none of them are standing up, even as a group. I mean, there's 2 of these boys and 4, and at least when Will is around 5, and they don't do anything. Or no, I'm sorry, is it 4 of them? And it's just the 3. I'm sorry, my numbers are off. Margarita people, I'm sorry. But anyway, even when these 2 bullies are outnumbered, they still, as a group, they're still fearful. They still back down. They still take his crap. When Mike is just like had enough, and he pushes him and knocks him down, and oh my gosh, I just love that because I'm like, I don't like bullies. I don't think that's cool. At all. And that boy totally got what he deserved. And then, I thought it was really cool because he didn't know that 11 was going to help. So, that boy, he's like, oh, you're in for it now, as he starts to get up from the ground and he starts charging after Mike. And you see Mike just kind of steel himself. He's like, oh, okay, I might have fucked up a little bit here, but I'm taking it. I'm not backing down. I'll take whatever is coming to me. And then you see 11, well, you don't really see her do anything, but you see her in the background, and it's her because as he stops just in mid stride, as he's walking, and you're like, oh, what's going on? And you just see like 11 kind of it's not focused on her. The camera's like focused on Mike, but you see her in the back, and she's just like real still, and you can kind of see her head down just a little bit, like when she's in that mode. And he looks back at her and sees that, oh, it's 11. And it was just such a super cool moment. The kid pisses his pants.
Yes.
Which was awesome because he totally deserved it. The whole school is laughing, which I thought was great because it's like, well, that just totally deflated that boy's ego and maybe he'll actually, leave these kids alone. He totally got what was coming to him. And I loved it as it was over and Mike looks back at Elle and she like swipes her nose like with attitude, 'cause she's got the blood coming down her nose like she always does when she uses her superpowers. And she just kind of like, swipes her nose.
Just a quick little wipe and she just turns and walks away.
Yeah, like
beautiful.
Exactly. It was beautifully done, beautifully executed, and really loved that moment. So, it was a short kind of scene, just a couple of minutes, and so there, not too much really to talk about it, but I loved it so much that I wanted to talk about it because I thought it was great.
Well, I love that. I mean, that scene too is very much like it's like the Christmas Story effect. It's like, oh well, this guy's old. He's a grade older, so like, there's no way I can defend myself against him. So I'm gonna let him push me around.
Mm-hmm.
And just like in A Christmas Story, it's like, you know what? I've had enough of your crap, dude. And you just flip out and you show him like, listen, I may be small, but I am fierce.
Yeah.
And that's like in that whole situation, Mike was like, I'll take an ass whooping, but I'm gonna make sure you know what you did is wrong.
Yeah, standing up for his friend. Yeah.
And it's interesting, like this reminded me of kind of a story from high school where, so like you talk about like this kid's missing and they're kind of making fun of it. I don't know if it's just if high school kids or younger kids just don't quite understand severity of things. Because I remember this was when like 9/11 happened. Like I was in high school at this point, and they, small school like this, so we're in an assembly, and our principal's kind of up there like explaining all this stuff that's going on, and like some kids were like snickering and laughing in the corner.
Oh wow!
Because I don't think they quite like acknowledge what was like. I don't know if they saw video or anything yet, but she like kind of flipped out and dropped the book on him. I was like, listen, this is like a very serious situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure she dropped a few curse words, which in that moment, like it's like, yeah, you can drop curse words in that situation because that was a crazy time.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the same situation as like, I don't think sometimes kids actually think that it's like what you're doing is not appropriate whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. You call them out on their bullshit. They're old enough at that point.
Yeah. Well, high school, they should really, well, of course, again, I don't think we saw the stuff that happened. So,
yeah.
But still, it's, yeah. Young and naive is probably about the best way to put it.
Definitely. I think at some point with children, I wouldn't say that necessarily you get a pass, but you have to always kind of keep in mind that depending on the age of the child and what their capacity for understanding and how the brain is still developing at certain ages and what they can understand, on their behavior and stuff, on how they're behaving. So I think, they don't necessarily get a pass, but that's something I think you always have to take into consideration. But I think high school, you probably should have a pretty good grasp on the severity of and the seriousness of a situation. So yeah, probably totally appropriate at the time. So that was my number 2. You already went, didn't you? Totally.
Yeah, I think I'm on my number 1 now.
What's your number 1?
So my number 1, I have to go with the title of the episode, and it's The Body.
Yes.
So again, I haven't been spoiled on this episode, so I have no clue when this episode starts if that's the actual Will or if it's something else. And you see Joyce flip out, and it's, I can imagine a mother in this scenario being like, listen, I don't, like, that's not my son. Whatever that thing is, that is not my son.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thing that she asked about was some birthmark, and that's where the scene kind of cut. So I don't know if there wasn't a birthmark, or maybe it didn't look right, or what it was. But
yeah, again,
a mother knows her baby, and if she asked to see a birthmark and there wasn't there, then she knew that that's not her son.
Mm-hmm.
And, Jonathan thinks she's crazy. I'm sure Hopper thinks she's crazy. And we get to go down this whole scenario. This whole episode is like, okay, well, is this actually, is this actually Will or who is this? And you see Hop, all the stuff that he's figured out. He's like, okay, I got to know for sure. And the guts it would take to do what he did.
Oh, right.
So he breaks into the morgue first off, and like the guy pops up and he's like, oh, hey, I ran into your buddy. I think it's O'Banner.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's like, well, I don't work with O'Banner. He's like, oh, I meant, and I love this because what he was trying to do, which is great police work, is to make that guy tell him who his partner was.
Exactly.
So he's basically like, oh, it must have been, and the guy was either too smart or too dumb to realize what he was doing, didn't say anything. He's like, oh, well, I guess it was just 5 fingers to the mouth. Boom!
Boom!
Knocks him out. But the guts to go into this morgue and first off, just look at the body. And he touched it and he's like, you could see that, like, okay, something's not right about this. But then to cut open what could be a body, for all he knows, he could have cut it open. It would have been just human organs.
Yeah, he doesn't know yet.
Yeah, and what does he find on the inside?
Cotton, it looked like.
Yes, it was just like a stuff full of cotton.
Like a stuffed animal, but a little bit thicker
Yes.
cotton stuff. Yeah.
And in that moment, you're like, oh, shit just got real.
Yeah.
Like, Hopper, like, his mind's got to be blown. He's got to figure out how to sew this kid back together.
Yeah, he's got to
And,
try to cover up his cover up.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's just like, again, that's just kind of like when Jonathan realized that there is something faceless out here. Now Hopper's like, oh shit, Joyce isn't crazy. Like something's not right.
Yeah, all the pieces. It's like the pieces are coming together, yet we still don't really know anything.
Yeah, it's just enough to know he's like, oh, okay, like this is serious. Like the dude said that we're both gonna die because we messed up here. Like that could very well happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's really good. I totally agree with you. And that kind of, did you have anything else you want to say? Because that kind of leads me into my number one.
No, that's pretty much the
Okay,
main things
so
I had on it.
we'll kind of stay around that because my number one is just the general feel, the people in this episode and their feelings of helplessness and the actions that they're taking because of that helplessness. What's a result of that helplessness? So I think we've got a couple of different characters in the episode feeling that. You know, you've got Joyce. She feels completely helpless because nobody's listening to her. She's telling them, you know, she's just been informed Will's body has been found. And she's like, no, I was just talking to him. Look at the lights. Look at this. I was just communicating with him. It's not him. You know, this is crazy. He's not dead. They take her to the morgue where it's like, okay, we're going to show you proof. How much more proof can you get than, you know, and God, how heartbreaking can that be? Seriously. I mean, as a parent, you're a parent, I'm a parent. Can you imagine? There's nothing more terrible, you know, than you know, thinking about having to be in that kind of situation. So I think if you're a parent,
Yeah.
you know, it's terrible that everybody knows that it's terrible, but when you're a parent, it really kind of hits home. So how terrible she's on the other side of that glass wall, and you know, she's being asked to identify her son. She still doesn't believe it, and I'm like you. It's like she's like, okay, well, he's got a birthmark on his right arm. Was it there? Because you see, she's like, he's got a birthmark, and you see in the reflection that person, you know, whoever it is, I'm guessing it's one of these agents or one of those state people, you know, start to bring his arm out from underneath the cover. Well, was there something there? Because then it cuts, and you see her like busting out the doors in hysterics. You know, that's not him. I don't know what you think that thing is. You know, she's so vehement in her reaction. You know, like, you know, somebody is messing with me. Somebody's doing something. I don't know what it is, but all she knows is her son's missing and she's going to find him. So you see her taking action. She's busting through the wall. She's trying to communicate with Will. She's blasting that song that she knows that he loves to try to draw him out and bring him home. That this is, if you can hear this, it will lead you home. So that's what she's doing. And you see Hopper, and we've talked about him a lot throughout the episode, so I won't go too far. But you see in the beginning, he feels, because at this point you know, at the end he's in a different place, but in the beginning he thinks Will is dead, and he feels like a failure. You can just see it in his face. Like when in the previous episode at the very end, when they pull him out, and you just see that in his face, like, oh my God, that's Will. You just see that his face drop, and you can tell he feels like a failure, that he didn't do enough to find Will alive and to bring him home alive, and that it's too late. You see it when he stays in his car when everybody's leaving, after they've told Joyce that Will was dead. He stays in his car, and like he's getting ready to leave, and he turns off his car and just like sleeps in his car outside the house, like he's just going to stay there in some capacity as like a form of comfort or something. I'm not really sure, but that's what it seemed like to me.
That's the gist I got, is like he was staying there kind of for Joyce.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm here just so first thing in the morning, like when I wake up, I'm already here for her.
And just to help maybe keep an eye on things, because I mean, she is a little erratic, And I think he knows that, so I think he just wants to help kind of keep an eye on her, and then just to be there for her should she need some support, because it's just her and her son. They're alone in the world, and her son, well, he's a child. I mean, he's in high school, but he's a child too, and you know, she needs someone to kind of lean on. So Hopper's doing that for her, which I thought was really touching. And then you touched on it earlier, you know, where he starts, you know, Hopper starts to question things. He goes to the corner, he goes to the morgue. And did you notice whenever, and this happened really fast, and even on my second watch, I almost missed it, when he opens up, when like he pulls that drawer out of the morgue, the first thing he sees was not Will's face. Didn't it look like a daughter, I don't know what his daughter looks like, but didn't it look like a girl's face?
Oh, I think I missed
that. Yeah, to me it looked like, because he kind of leered back and jumped back like, oh, like it was like he didn't see Will. He saw, it looked like a female child laying there. And it was, yeah, I mean, that's what I thought I saw. And he kind of jumped back, startled, because he wasn't expecting that. And I think that this particular episode, because we know something has happened to his daughter, she is apparently dead as well, but we don't know what happened. We don't know circumstances as to what happened. But obviously, him being as a parent can really relate where Joyce is coming from, dealing with the death of a child. And I think this has probably, everything that's currently happening has dredged up a lot for him. So I think that's who he was seeing at first. And then when he looks back, then he sees what we believe to be Will lying there on the slab. So we see all the steps that he's taking. He cuts open the body, sees that the stuffing is there. He's going all rogue, beating up that guy outside the bar, totally not being a, you know, straight up cop questioning. He's going undercover. Then you see him decide to break into the facility. He's like, fuck this, I'm gonna find out what the hell's going on.
Yes.
Which I thought was super cool. And then one other person I thought that, you know, we've talked about a little bit was Nancy. She's feeling really helpless. She, you know, she screams at her mom. She's like, you are not listening to me. She's telling the cops, you are not listening to me. Nobody's believing her about Barb, that this is not, she didn't run away. This is not just some little thing, that she is in danger. Something's happened. I know her. You know, she's putting together the torn picture. She goes to Jonathan. And I really like that moment. It's kind of outside the scope of this a little bit, where he finally admitted he was a little bit of a creeper. And
yeah, it was kind of like almost sweet, though. It's like, I know it's weird. And she's like, it's not. He's like, no, it's
I shouldn't have done that. That was wrong. And I thought, okay, so I gave him a little bit of shit the last episode, because I'm like, man, that's hard to kind of come back from. That was a really creepy thing that he did, taking those pictures of her. But she seemed to not be too offended by it. I think she was probably slightly creeped out in the other episode, but she seemed to be, you know, kind of letting him off the hook a little bit, which I thought was really nice of her. And he did apologize, so he redeemed himself in that moment, that he admitted that was probably not his best moment. So I did like that. But I just thought, you know, we had all these characters feeling these feelings of helplessness, and nobody's listening to them. You know, because in Hopper, I mean, he hasn't expressed these feelings to anyone because he's not sure himself what's going on. I think that he's not one to bring this stuff up unless he feels he's got something concrete or some real evidence. So he doesn't have anyone to listen to him, but I think he just felt really helpless with Will being gone, and that he couldn't do anything to save him. But he obviously now knows something is going on. So that was my number one.
I like it. Yeah, it's a lot of cool stuff happening with that. I mean, it's really good points.
A lot in this episode. So
I guess, do you have any extra notes then?
I had a lot of notes. There was so much. And just looking over them, the first note that I have, I'm just going to jump into it. Sorry, I'm going to totally railroad you here. You mentioned earlier, and that's why it's fresh on my mind, whenever Hopper came into the morgue and was, you know, trying to trip up that cop into, you know, kind of giving up that person's name as to who he was working for or with. Did you notice what the cop was reading? He was reading Cujo from Stephen King. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
You didn't see the cover, but you saw the back sleeve with Stephen King's picture on it. And when Hopper came in, he's like, "Oh yeah, crazy dog," or some remark like that. And I was like, he's reading Cujo, super cool. So nice little reference.
That's kind of interesting. Okay. I was trying to figure out when that came out. So it came out in 1981. So yeah, it would make sense. That'd be a pretty popular book at that point.
Yeah, definitely. Stephen King was definitely popular, you know, even in that time. So I thought that was pretty cool, because also in part of my notes that is related to this with Stephen King and Cujo was that the title of the show, The Body, Is that ringing a bell for you? Because I know you're a Stephen
That's
King fan.
yeah, I think that's the short story he wrote that was the inspiration for Stand By Me, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that title of the show was kind of like a little throwback or little praise of Stephen King. So it was really cool to see that sprinkled throughout with that book and then the title of the show. I thought one little kind of, it wasn't a funny moment, but whenever I was thinking about it, it was just, interesting to me. You've talked a lot about Mike's dad being like this typical 80s dad who has like no idea what's going on in his kids' lives. But but he actually, in this moment, showed concern.
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of, because he's like, do you want me to go talk to Michael? Should I go down and talk? Because he says, not you, not we, should I? And I thought,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, hey, good for you, Mike's dad. And see, he's so insignificant to me, I can't even remember his name, because he's just the dad that lies in his recliner and falls asleep watching the news.
Yeah, I still kind of wrote F and Ted on that because it's like he's asking his wife. It's like, so like I know his friend died, but should I go talk to him?
Do you think we should talk to him? Yeah, he just got the
Yeah.
news his friend was dead. Should we talk to him? Yeah, you do have a good point. Your point's better than my point. I bow down, Sean. That was
I mean,
was
at
far
least
superior.
he at least cared enough to ask. I mean, it could have like probably realistically he'd be sitting in the chair. He's like, hey, when's what's our
dinner?
kid's name?
Or when's dinner?
Yeah, when's dinner? And then is Mike's friend Will coming over ever again? Like I haven't seen him for a while.
Right. He's so disconnected from what's going on, which I think is pretty typical. It's definitely, I think, kind of different times. I think parents, and I mean, there were good parents then too. I think Mike's mom is pretty cool. I think she's really involved in her children, but I think that's pretty typical of the dads at that time. Sorry, 80s dads. I'm not down on anybody. I'm sure you were very involved with your children's lives. But yeah, I thought that was kind of a funny moment. I'm like, well, at least he's actually seems to be somewhat connected to what's happening at the time. And he seemed really sad about it anyway, that his son was going through that. Jonathan and Joyce arguing in the street and everybody's like standing around just really took me back. I was like, oh, joys of a small town. Everybody knows your damn
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
How long before that, argument that they had and news, sprinkles throughout the town. So I was just like, ugh, kind of, took me back a little bit about how everybody knows what the hell you're doing, probably even before you're doing it.
Yeah.
Another note that I had was Lucas. I really like how he questions his friends. He can stand up to them, because they're, Mike is trying to convince him that, 11 is communicating with Will. Will's not dead. Dustin's kind of buying into it without, really questioning it too much. He's just like, yeah, Will's alive. But Lucas is kind of like, well, what the heck was that in the water? We saw him dead. He's a little bit doubtful and skeptical, and I appreciate that. I think it would be really boring to have all of them, kind of follow along, and I just think that's really interesting that you've got the one friend who's not so quick to believe everything, at least until he can see it. He's not just he needs some proof anyway. And then I think that was about all my notes. The other stuff we've already pretty much covered. So, one other thing. Sorry, this is going to be long. I'm really going to jump in here. Did you notice whenever Nancy was in the classroom, I'm guessing it was like an English or literature class, and she got called, the teacher was reading something out of a book.
I didn't pick up what he was reading though. What was it?
So this, it's from a book. Well, it's from a novella. I'm sorry. It's by an author named Joseph Conrad, and it was his most read novella called Heart of Darkness. And I thought it was really interesting because I found it interesting just in the few words that were spoken in the show. It piqued my curiosity enough that I had to go look this up. So this Heart of Darkness kind of has a double meaning in its title. One dictionary meaning is the title refers to the interior of the Africa called Congo. Another hidden meaning is the title stands for the darkness or primitiveness that every person possesses in his or her mind and heart. The etymological meaning of the phrase Heart of Darkness is the innermost region of the territory, which is yet to be explored, where people led the nomadic and primitive way of living. The setting time of the novel, Heart of Darkness, dates back to those periods when the continent of Africa was not fully explored. So the continent was called the Heart of Darkness. The central character, Kurtz, which we hear the teacher reading whenever the the principal or whoever comes in, he comes under the influence of the Savages and becomes one of them in the same dark place called the Congo. The Savages and Kurtz, in fact, belong to the Heart of Darkness. The term Heart of Darkness stands for another meaning, too, and the journey of Kurtz and Marlowe, which is another character, to explore the interior of the dark continent called Congo is not only the physical search of some of the territory, but it's an exploration of the innermost part of the human mind and the human heart. The geographical search is comparatively easier than the search of oneself, one's dark continent. Both Kurtz and Marlowe are in an implied sense in the journey to find their dark region of mind and heart. In the case of Kurtz, he cannot hold the mystical and attractive power of his savagery self, his suppressed primitive self, and gives in. He fails to control his moral restraint. He submits to the dark side of his personality and becomes one savage. He reaches to the heart of darkness but cannot resist its power upon him, and he cannot come back from his subconscious state of mind. But in the case of Marlowe, he too travels to the heart of darkness, the subconscious. He reaches there and witnesses the heavy influence of primitive self on Kurtz. So one critic commented upon the title of the novel, Heart of Darkness, states that the darkness here is many things. It is the unknown, it is the subconscious, it is the moral darkness, it is the evil which swallows up Kurtz, and it is the spiritual emptiness which he sees at the center of the existence. But above all, it is a mystery itself, the mysteriousness of man's spiritual life. That was really long, but I thought that was really interesting because we talk a lot about the darkness leading to where wherever Will and Barb are, and I think also to the heart of darkness of Dr. Brenner and whomever he's working with, and I think it shows that darkness in man. And this novella actually inspired Apocalypse Now.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So if you've watched Apocalypse Now and dissected it and talked about it and know a lot about the story, that this particular book.
Yeah, I just looked. You can actually get it on like an iBook. It's free. So if anybody wants to check it out, I just downloaded it. So I'm probably going to give it a read because that sounds super interesting.
Yeah, it's. I heard it's a hard read. Like the author purposely made it hard to read. So I'm not really sure the meaning behind that. There's a tons out there if you want to check that out for yourself. So yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. Like why that little bit? Why did we get it? How does that relate to the show? And the darkness within man, I think, is kind of what it kind of comes down to. Like the darkness that we see whatever's lurking out there, whatever pieces that we're seeing or glimpses that we're seeing of this darkness, wherever Will and Barb could be, wherever poor Shepherd who didn't get his hazard pay, that kind of darkness. Also the darkness that lives in man. I thought that was interesting. I know that was long, so thanks for bearing with me.
Oh no, that's perfect. That's cool. Those are always the things I miss, but I love how I don't know if it was a director or who kind of said like, oh, this would be pretty cool to put in here because it's going to have a lot more deep meaning and everything. And fit perfectly with the theme that we're going on. Because it's like I was focused on Nancy the whole time trying to get a read on what she was going through that I kind of spaced out on that. But it's cool like when people can bring that in and be like, oh, well, there's this other meaning to it. So that way you go back and rewatch it and then maybe even read this book. It's like, oh my gosh, this means so much. And it's just cool that like somebody that's creating this show thought to do that.
I know. I'm like, I can't even begin to, think of the layers of writing a show like this, and like you said, these little sprinkles and little gems you get throughout that I thought, because this kind of has to do with what we're learning about in the show within people and also an actual maybe physical place. Like this book, Africa is a dark place called the Dark Continent, but then also it goes into the darkness of man, which I think that we're seeing as well. So I thought that was really interesting. I thought, oh, if only I could be that creative. I wouldn't be here podcasting with you, Sean. So,
and I would be sad.
It would be really sad. It would be really sad. Well, what were your notes? I'm sorry, that was really long on my part.
Oh, no, you're fine. You pretty much touched on most of my notes. We pretty much talked about just about everything. The only thing that I noted was whenever Hopper left and Joyce made that beeline to the shed to get the axe, when she was walking, she was a mom on a mission. And the thought I had with that is like, nobody messes with Mama Bear. Like she was getting her claws out by getting an axe, and if that thing came back through, like she was gonna chop the crap out of that thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, the way she just kind of stomped, like it seemed very exaggerated, but it was very somebody on a mission, and I kind of really dug that.
That was a super cool moment. Do you think that when she came back from the shed that she intended, at least at that very moment, because she sat down on the couch with just holding that axe, do you think that that was just in defense? Like, if that damn monster comes crawling through that wall again, I'm chopping its damn head off? Or do you think she intended
No,
to
I
take
think it was
down the
more of
wall?
like, if when that thing comes back through this wall, like I'm not running, like I am gonna kill this thing or it's gonna kill me. That was kind of the vision I got.
Yep, I kind of agree with that. It didn't look like it kind of looked like an afterthought, like, oh, you know what, I think I'm just going to bust through this wall and see if I
Yeah,
can get
yeah.
back to Will. But yeah, I agree. I thought it was more of like a defense thing, that she wasn't going to run out of the house this time. She was going to stand her ground,
Yep.
like Will, or like what Mike did with the bully. So yeah, cool. Good notes. Okay, so I think we're ready for some news. A little bit of news that we have for Stranger Things, and I think we have got something maybe about Netflix as well. Do you want to
Yep.
start off,
I'll
Sean?
start off. So the first one is from Nerdist. So it's a rare thing for a performer to have two blockbuster franchises to their credit early in their careers, and yet Finn Wolfhard has managed to score one of the leading roles in both Stephen King's It and Stranger Things within the same calendar year. That impressive feat means he's in one of the biggest movies of the year and one of the most popular shows. Although Wolfhard's character Richie Tozen and Mike Wheeler both had to face unimaginable horrors in their respective stories, they had two very different personalities, which I agree completely with that. Yeah, they're like characters completely different. Wolfhard recently shared his playlist from It, which he made with Richie in mind. It's kind of an inside-out way to get into the character, but perhaps it's better than taking a trip through the Upside Down. There's definitely a lot of 80s classics on Wolfhard's playlist, including two from David Bowie, Heroes, and Starman, which we obviously know is from the 70s, but still, as well as two from The Cure, Love Song and In Between Days. Guns N' Roses also received dual representation with Welcome to the Jungle and Sweet Child of Mine.
I love that kid.
Yeah. Wolfhard's list isn't too surprising given the era that is supposed to represent, although Toto's Africa, Aha's Take On Me, and the B-52's Rock Lobster seem a little light given the unrelating darkness that Richie and his friends had to face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like that he
cool.
picked the movie, the songs from the time frame he was kind of in, which is kind of from the book. Richie, spoilers from the book. When he grows up, he becomes a DJ, like a jockey, like a well-known jockey.
Really?
Yeah, and in the book, like music has a really big influence on stuff in there too. So it's pretty cool that he's kind of picked like the harder rock type stuff.
Yeah, I like it. I was really impressed with his list, and I thought, okay, did someone help him? Did he just kind of poke around himself and pick some favorites? I was pretty impressed. Pretty cool. Yeah, I really liked it. I hate clowns, but damn it, I went and watched it again this last weekend, and
Nice.
just as good. Yeah, I've seen it
You
twice.
saw it at a drive-in too, didn't
I
you?
did. The second time around was at our drive-in, so
That
you know.
takes some guts.
You know what? Well, you know what? I have my dog with me, so.
Oh, but you saw it by yourself? Like you didn't go with somebody else?
No, I did. I was with my daughter and one of her friends, and
Oh, okay.
I saw it the first time with my daughter because I dragged her to it. She was absolutely I almost had to peel her out of the door to get her through the doors of the movie theater to come see it with me because she is even more petrified than I am. I really might have traumatized her a little bit by allowing her to watch it when she was little. Bad parent, sorry. But yeah, it really affected her when she was little, and she was really scared to go watch this. She does have an appreciation for it, but yet it still kind of scared her a little bit. But yeah, her friend wanted to go see it. She hadn't seen it yet, so we went with her friend to watch it. And yeah, it was at the drive-in. It was super cool. I mean, what's more awesome than watching a scary movie at a drive-in? You know? Yeah, that's the experience. So. Okay, next article is from Entertainment Weekly, and this is just a little bit more, it's kind of Stranger Things and a little bit of Netflix news at the same time. So we know that Netflix always kind of gets ready to release its list of things that are coming out in October, and since this is a Stranger Things podcast, you know, this October Netflix is bringing us what we want. but they're taking away 30 Rock. Sorry, 30 Rock fans. It's a really great show. The titles coming to the streaming site next month include season 2 of the original series and 80s throwback juggernaut Stranger Things. Yay! And also some great movie comedies from the aughts like Miss Congeniality and Talladega Nights. Documentaries on icons Marsha P. Johnson, Joan Didion, a new comedy special from Patton Oswalt, who won both a Grammy and an Emmy for his last Netflix hour, Talking for Clapping. So looking forward to that one. And because, hey, October means Halloween, right? So to satisfy your spooky cravings just before Halloween, Netflix is adding Cult of Chucky. Jonathan Groff's.
I'm in on that one.
Yeah, Jonathan Groff's serial detective drama Mindhunter and the Stephen King novel adaptation 1922. And we'll post a story. I'm not going to list everything because they list everything weekly or daily, whichever it is it's releasing in Netflix in October. I'm not going to read you that entire list, but we will post it. If you like in the show notes, if you want to check out that full list of what's coming to Netflix in October. But I thought it was pretty relevant since Stranger Things is being released, and there's a couple, of course, for Halloween, some spooky things to get you in the mood.
All right, so our last story is again from Nerdist, and so one of the most impressive aspects of Stranger Things is its impeccable casting. Success beyond the series has already found its way to Finn Wolfhard, aka Mike Wheeler, who stars as Motormouth Richie in the recently released adaptation of Stephen King's It. Fame may not have gone to Finn's head, but according to Stranger Things creator Matt and Ross Duffer, their young star did pick up a new habit between seasons of the show. He's got a foul mouth, said Matt Duffer as he was interviewed by Variety on the Emmy Awards red carpet. After Wolfhard came back from shooting It, he did it before we shot season 2. He was saying F-bombing everywhere. And I was like, what happened to my innocent Finn Wolfhard? Matt's brother Ross agreed jokingly that It totally corrupted him. Though the pair did concede that Wolfhard is still a great kid, whom they're proud to see hit the big time, especially in a Stephen King movie.
I can totally relate. You can't blame the kid.
Yeah. well, now he's got like a total, like he's got a free pass for the rest of his life. So, you know, he'll be at his house and like he'll like break a toy, or he's playing a video game and he's losing.
Yeah.
And he'd go, "This effing sucks."
Yeah.
His mom will come in and be like, "Hey, Finn, watch your mouth." "Sorry, Mom, I'm just practicing for the next It movie."
That's right. That's right. Danger of letting children curse in movies.
Yep.
I always wondered how that affected them, and like, you know, what do you do as a parent, you know, letting your kids, you know, say things like that. You know, I'm not opposed to foul language. I don't want my kids running around cursing at certain ages when they're really little. And I'm not offended by foul language. I have an extreme potty mouth, and I drop the F-bomb, I don't know how many times a day. My swear jar would be very full. So I don't have an aversion to it or anything, but, you know, it's like, you know, if it's used correctly and in good taste, that's my concern. But yeah, that's hilarious. Yeah, he's definitely got a free pass. Just studying, Mom.
Just trying to get in character.
Absolutely. He's a, what do they call it? Method actor. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he takes it very seriously. So we got some letters from the Upside Down, a little bit listener feedback. So the first one that we have is from Andrew Newton. He says, by this midpoint of the season, there are a lot of reasons to be hooked on the show. Stranger Things may on its surface be sci-fi horror, but as with most good shows, it's much more than that too. The Body deals with the aftermath to Holly Jolly's emotional conclusion, and as such, we spend most of the time in the regular world with the characters trying to pick up the pieces. By the end of it all, the central characters start to recognize in their own way that things aren't exactly what they seem. One of the interesting dynamics I find with Stranger Things is how the different storylines spread across genres. Hopper in this episode is knee-deep in a conspiracy thriller, where Joyce and Jonathan are essentially in a domestic drama about grief. And of course, the coming-of-age themes remain strong, with the boys giving Elle a makeover.
Yeah, I kind of love that he's pointing out, like, this is very much genre, like, multiple genres in one.
Definitely. That's what makes this show really great.
Steve Brown, so much good stuff in this episode. That song at the beginning was haunting. Hopper going undercover to get info. Joyce never believing that the body was really Will. Nancy asking Jonathan how long he's been a creeper, photographer. Best of all was Elle wiping at her nose after making the bully pee his pants. I watched that twice. Oh, That was like that was an epic mic drop before there was mic drops.
Absolutely. That was great. Kristen Howell says, so this is the episode you can see everything is about to go down. If only we could get everyone who's coming to the same conclusions to get into a room together. I had a weird thought. When Eleven was trying to find Will in the AV room, I think that opened the portal enough for Joyce to see him in the wall and know he was alive. Once the AV room caught fire and Eleven passed out, the portal closed on the other side of town. It's so hard not to keep going. I love this show.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that too, that she's kind of the one walking between both worlds. So maybe she's the one allowing that monster to come through.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if somehow through her experiments, she's somehow responsible for opening that up.
Ooh, good catch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. So we have some listener feedback from last episode, the Chapter 3 Holly Jolly. So Andrew Newton, if you're not already hooked on this show, this is the episode that will decide it is for you. And he's talking about Holly Jolly. The show has plenty of adventure, horror, and sci-fi, but the show is at its core an emotional journey with the characters. The ending in this episode has a weight to it that really drives that home.
Agreed. Robin Young Sanders says, I've been listening to you guys the past 3 weeks and I'm really loving the podcast. Thank you. I look forward to it every Friday. I absolutely love the show Stranger Things. I was a teen in the 80s, so it is a trip down memory lane every episode. So many callbacks that totally bring out the nostalgia in me. Keep up the good work, guys, and I look forward to next week's podcast. Thank you, Robin.
Thanks. That means a bunch.
Yeah.
And we had some other feedback just on the podcast in general from Wendy Ott Eppers. She said, loving the podcast. In 1983, I was 15, so this was definitely my era.
Yeah. Hi, Wendy. Yeah, great feedback, guys. Thanks so much, everyone, for the listener feedback. We appreciate everything that you write in and tell us if you want to write about something about a previous episode that we've already covered. You know, we're happy to look at that and, you know, listen to what you have to say, because I think, you know, especially if you're kind of going back and rewatching a little bit, you pick up so much more on doing a rewatch. So anytime you guys have any kind of feedback, if you love us, if you hate us, you know, we'll listen. Let us know what we're doing right, but thank you. But be nice. But we love everyone, you know, taking the time to actually, you know, write that feedback, because, you know, not everybody does that, and we appreciate every bit that we get. So thank you, everyone, for taking that time.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
All right, so for next week's episode, we will be covering the 5th episode from Season 1 titled Chapter 5, The Flea and the Acrobat. So the description for this episode is, Hopper breaks into the lab to find the truth about Will's death. The boys try to locate the gate that will take them to Will.
The gate.
Ooh.
See, that's
Dun, dun, dun.
that's almost better than portal. Why haven't I been saying gate?
We should have been saying, we'll have to get that in our vocabularies to say the gate.
Yeah, I'm going to be dreaming about the gate. There's an 80s movie called The Gate. Did you, God.
There's a horrible Johnny Depp movie, I think, called The Gate. I thought it was.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know if it was called The Gate. The Ninth Gate.
Yeah, The Ninth Gate.
Yeah,
There's like a weird sex scene at the end where he's having sex with like a demon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really creepy. But it's Johnny Depp, so you have to watch it.
That's true.
But there's this 80s movie. Check it out. I don't remember exactly who's in it because my mind, Margarita again, people. Check it out. It was super, super creepy. I will not give anything away in case anyone hasn't watched it. I hate giving away my age here, knowing the fact that I've watched it, but IMDb that shit and look up The Gate, and I don't have no idea where it's available, if it's available. It was not this huge, you know, hit or anything, but it scared the bejeebers out of me as a kid. So check it out. It's a little bit freaky, but yeah, check it out. So I'm going to have to get the gate. Now I'm going to be dreaming about the gate. I'm going to be having nightmares. So look at the sacrifices I make for you guys.
Well, you're going to open that gate, and guess who's going to be on the other side? Pennywise the Clown.
Oh my God. Sean, damn it. Now you've done it. You're going to get an earful. Oh, damn. Now I'm scared. I can't go on. Okay, so thank you guys again so much. We're so excited to have you travel to Hawkins, Indiana with us. And until then, you can follow us on Twitter at StrangeTcast.
You can like us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/strangertcast.
You can email us at strangerthingscastpod tv-time@gmail.com. And you can also find us on the TV Time app.
Yeah. And you can find Strange Indeed and a bunch of other great podcasts like The Walking Dead Cast at podcastica.com. Go out and leave a review for Strange Indeed or any of the other Podcastica podcasts on Apple Podcast.
Yeah, check out Podcastic. A lot of great things happening. And make sure to check out Sean in his other podcast. What? The Language of Bromance that comes out every Sunday. So go check that out.
All right, well, that's our show, episode 4, chapter 4, The Body.
God, we're at the halfway point.
Yes.
So until next time, I'm Marina.
And I'm Sean.
And Andrew Newton is strange indeed.
Wow. She looks
Pretty. Good. You look pretty good.